Good day, everybody, and welcome to episode 102 of the Teacher Emilio podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Emilio, and today I want to talk about, is Australia as good as everyone says? Because when you go on the internet, we see all these things about how amazing Australia is, that you're going to come and you're going to change your life. You will just come, study something, and then get your PR, and life is going to be amazing. And a part of me wonders is this really as nice as it is, like we see here on social media? Is that the truth? Is it always like that? Is it not like that? I guess, a part of me feels like this will be a bit of a hot topic, and this is the first episode being live and being recorded at the same time. So be nice to me, for those of you here on YouTube, if you're watching the recording or if you're watching the episode on YouTube. And for those of you that are here on Instagram, thank you for your patience as well. And also, massive thank you for those of you who shared some of your stories. Obviously, I really respect your privacy, my students' privacy, friends' privacy, etc. So I'll be making reference to some stories that have happened in the past, things that I have noticed, things that people have told me. And well, this is, again, all being paraphrased. No one's being mentioned. Obviously, I don't want to get cancelled and I want to stay professional. Thank you. Okay. The other important thing that I have to say is massive thank you for those of you listening to the episode on Spotify, because, your support means also a lot. And I think that Spotify, I've got some of you who really, really love Spotify. Who knows? Maybe I will eventually have Team Spotify, Team YouTube, and well, now I have here with me Team Instagram. Thank you for joining me, guys. Okay, so going back to the topic. Will Australia change your life? Is everything going to be sunshine and rainbow when you come here? Will you basically, let's say, come here and all your problems be solved? Well, before we begin, I just want to tell you a mini story. And this is something that I have heard over the years as a teacher, helping international students from all around the world. But, obviously as a Latino, I am very close with the Latino community. So thank you guys. But something that once a student told me was along the lines of, okay, teacher, I came to Australia, I sold my motorbike, I sold my car, I basically sold everything I had in my country. And I just came here because I just had to, do my first visa payment. Then I'm just going to get a loan. And after I pay back the loan, I will start working. And after I start working, probably like in the next 2 months, I'm just going to buy an apartment. Then I will just rent it with Airbnb. Then, in the next 6 months, I'm going to be drinking margaritas at the beach in Bali, somewhere in Bali, Thailand. And then, I just come back to Australia. That's all good. I just send money back to my family and I live the good life. Is that really true? And obviously, I say this, obviously exaggerating a bit, but unfortunately, that this is like part of the story that some people are told, that you're going to come here, you are going to start working and you're going to start becoming a millionaire somehow. And that's not necessarily true. And it is tricky because a lot of the times what people are told can be like very sugar-coated. Mini English lesson. If you sugarcoat something, it's like you want to make something sound really nice or maybe better than what it actually is. So just to give you a quick example, and this is coming from someone who worked as a cleaner for, close to 5 years. It's like, yes, you come to Australia, you will make a lot of money. But what people don't tell you is how hard you have to work for that money, and also how much you have to spend. Because if you live anywhere, let's say, I'm going to use me and Venezuela as an example. I came here when I was 18, right? And when 18-year-old Emilio heard that you could work in McDonald's, Macca's, for, let's say 18 to 20 bucks an hour, I was like, man, I'm going to go to Australia, and if I fail in university and life, that doesn't matter. I can work in McDonald's. I can do, let's say, the most basic job on earth. And I'm going to be okay because I'm earning, 18, 20 bucks an hour. And obviously that is a lot of money when you compare it to anywhere in South America. But when I started earning that much money, 18, 20 bucks an hour as an international student, then I very quickly realized that I didn't have that much spare cash. I think that's a struggle that we all have. And this is obviously not only for us international students, this is probably also for local students as well. It's always a struggle, especially when you're young. Oh my God, saying that makes me feel so old. But anyways, let me continue with the episode. So it is really tricky because when you think about it, it all sounds really good. But then the longer you stay here, or as soon as you come to Australia, you realize that things are not as easy as people say. One example is the first one that I mentioned. Like, you come and everything seems really... you feel like you're gonna become a millionaire because you make a lot of money. But just the same way that you earn a lot of money, you also spend a lot of money. Especially when taxes come. And, it is your first year as an international student. And you're like, man, this is the best decision of my life. I worked for, I don't know, let's say 6 to 9 months on average. And you get back like $2,000 and you think, oh my God, this is incredible. Or maybe a bit less. It depends on how much you work, right? This is not financial advice. But then the longer you stay, you realize like, maybe it's not exactly like that. Or it could be like, I'm earning $3,000 a month, but I'm spending $2,700. And I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm not, having holidays. Or as I said before, I'm not going to Bali having margaritas at the beach. So it is really interesting when this basically start hitting home. And especially when you reverse, I think as someone who is from a developing country, like the minute you start comparing prices back, you start to go crazy. So at some point in my life, I said, I cannot compare the prices of Australia with Venezuela because it's just insane. It's just way too expensive. Another thing, and now let me tell you some of the stories. And this is again getting into, let's say, the challenges that we have. One of you mentioned something really interesting, and I'm paraphrasing here. If you want to go out of the cleaning bubble, you need to have good English. Or if you want to stop working as a cleaner, you need to learn English. And this is a very interesting thing because what can happen is you get like, let's say, trapped. And I'm doing like this because you're not really trapped, right? You could stop or you could change things. But people get trapped in the, let's say, Latino bubble, or let's say you get trapped in the bubble of your ethnicity, of your country, of your, let's say, region, right? So I suppose with, a lot of people say, a lot of friends from Colombia say the Colombian bubble, the Latino bubble. Maybe, I guess, maybe with people from Brazil, they may say the Brazilian bubble, or I don't know, the Chinese bubble, Indian bubble, etc. And what that basically means is that, yes, you live in Australia, but you never use English. You use your mother tongue at work, let's say, in this case, Spanish, to keep things simple. And it's like, yeah, you're in Australia, but you're always speaking in Spanish, you're working as a cleaner, and you basically stay there for a long time. And when I think about it, that happened to me. In not necessarily a bad way, because by being a cleaner for a long time, I also learned a lot. And let's say that it obviously helped me to get to where I am today. So obviously I'll be forever grateful. But I have seen in my times when I was a cleaner and in my whole time in Australia, I have seen people getting, let's say, way too comfortable and just aiming to stay there, which is, I suppose, okay. Everyone is free to, choose what to do. But it is interesting, this person mentioned this because from what I have been noticing ever since I became a teacher for almost 6.5 years ago, lots of people, especially I'm going to be talking about Latinos now, a lot of Latinos don't leave South America to become a cleaner or to work in Uber or to basically work in a cafe. And by the way, don't get me wrong, because as I am saying this, a part of me feels that some of you may be thinking, I work in a cafe and I love a cafe. That's totally cool, okay? So I'm not trying to bring down anybody, but what I'm trying to say is that basically lots of people come with high aspirations. And I guess the problem with those aspirations or those desires is that maybe before coming, they are not told how hard it's going to be. I have met lots of, just to give you a few examples, lots of lawyers, lots of economists, business majors, engineers, many engineers, especially with engineers. And it's not easy to get a job here as an engineer. Is it impossible? Of course not. I have seen many people close to me, students, former students, friends of friends, people who basically get their PR as an engineer. So it's not to say that, let me just quickly check something here with the camera. Okay, hopefully it's all good. And this is not to say that you can't get an engineering job or let's say a professional job, but it is really hard. I'll tell you a bit about my experience. I, as an international student, I studied accounting and finance. I love numbers. I love Excel. Now I work as a teacher, but I guess that's a different podcast episode. But I remember finishing my studies. I finished my bachelor, accounting and finance. Lots of HDs and distinctions. So let's say that I was an extremely good student, international student though. And I remember whenever I went to job interviews, I would be asked that question. Oh, tell me your work experience. Tell me about your visa, blah, blah, blah. And it was really tough. And the reason I mention this is because if it is tough for someone who is getting a degree with good English, who is just, let's say, very fresh, because I was young, I would have been, like 23, 24, I couldn't get a job. Obviously, look, that is also a completely different topic because there were a lot of things that I didn't do properly. And maybe I was a completely different person a few years ago. But the point is that it is not like you arrive in Australia and boom, you get a job and life is amazing. Life does get amazing. And I want to give a positive spin in just a little bit. But it's not always the case. Sometimes it can be really, really rough, especially at the beginning. And you know, I guess that we don't talk about it. The next thing that I want to mention here from, again, a former student, it was... This is a bit of me praising myself. This person paraphrased and said, Emilio's class was amazing, studying in ELICOS was fantastic, but, when it comes to getting into university, into my master's degree, that wasn't really that nice. That wasn't nowhere near as good as my time when I was in my English class. I think that this is a struggle that lots of people have, and it could be partially because when you come to Australia, people tell you like, yeah, just come here, you're gonna learn English, this and that. But then what no one tells you is like how different the education system is. And for example, from what I've noticed, because I didn't study university where I'm from, but I get the feeling that in South America, hello guys, I get the feeling that in South America, perhaps in Asia and other parts of the world, you are a bit more taken care of, let's say, by your teachers. Like, for example, you're in university, hello. You're in university and maybe, you know, your teacher gives you homework, he checks if you've done your homework, and the teacher is like, as we say in Spanish, the teacher is like a bit chasing you. And it almost feels like it is obviously university, but maybe it is not as quote unquote relaxed as it is here in Australia, where basically you are completely independent. As an international student, you go from having to go to every single class, not missing the 80% attendance, to I don't care about you, because it's basically like that. A good example could be, and I'll tell you from my experience and from what this student mentioned, I remember when I was doing my degree, and well, technically, now that doesn't happen to me that much. I'm studying a master's online, but it is a bit different because, again, as I just told you, it's most of it is online. But when I was doing my undergrad face-to-face, it was really, really tricky because sometimes I would go and ask a teacher a question after class. And look, as a teacher myself, I know that a teacher can be busy. Maybe they have to go to another class and blah, blah, blah. But more than once, the teacher said to me, hey, sorry, no questions. Send me an email. I'm busy. And let me tell you, I have been also extremely busy, maybe having like a class right after I finish from one school into another school, or maybe I'm doing my private classes, you know. By the way, thank you so much for your support, for telling people about my classes, my courses. It means the world to me. But whenever a student asks a question, I just can't, you know, because a part of me remembers when a teacher said to me, sorry, email me, send me an email, let's talk later. And yeah, I just can't do that. I would stay with my students, and this person told me, Emilio, you were so nice to us. I really enjoyed your class. Some of these teachers are just very distant. They don't seem to care that much. And I don't think it's necessarily that the teachers don't care. Maybe it's like different dynamics because you go from a small class into like, who knows, you know, a lecture theater with like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, even more students. And sometimes maybe like an empty lecture theater. So it can be tricky. But what I also want to say from this comment is that the very beginning, like that beginning stage, is almost like the holiday stage. It's been a while, I know. Talking about former students, there you go, one in the chat. And the tricky thing is that at the very beginning, it is all beautiful, it is all really nice, but then let's say once you get into university, things change a bit, and I guess this could also be like a culture shock, and it really hits us. Another thing could be said, and it might be like how nice the teachers are and all that. I guess that can be a bit of a hit and miss, because I have met students who have studied or have changed unis, I should say, and some of them have studied in Melbourne Uni, Monash, which are, the best universities in Melbourne, and some of them, they love their courses, others don't really love their courses, others that studied in, let's say, some of those level 2, maybe level 3, even level 4 unis like La Trobe, RMIT, or I don't know, like something a bit lower. I mean, not in like the top tier, I should say, to keep things polite. And it was really interesting because, everyone has got different experiences. Now, next comment. And now that I mentioned culture shock, I have one here from a former student as well and good friend who basically said, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you like your Colombian bread, this person is from Colombia, if you like your Colombian bread and you really like coffee and that Latino environment, maybe, and you get homesick really quickly, maybe don't come. Especially don't come to Australia, because you will get homesick, you will struggle, and it is going to be a bit tough. Is it going to be impossible? No. But then this person goes on to say, but on the flip side, if you want to live in a decent society, I think by decent what this person means is that basically in a place where, people follow the rules, it is not as crazy as South America. So if you want to live in a place like that where most people follow the rules, unlike a lot of parts of South America, then you should consider, and you should come to Australia, you should come to New Zealand, you should come to Ireland, or basically you should just go overseas. That's the whole, let's say, meaning of that one. And it might be true, because I remember being in Venezuela or growing up, and a lot of little things I didn't like. And I had this reverse culture shock, because I went back last year with my wife, and it was so cool to show her my country. But on the flip side, it was also really tricky, because a part of me is like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, a few things. And I don't know, if that happens to you, or like if you're watching and this happens to you, then of course you'll say, look, Australia is amazing, because you don't get those things that you don't like in your country, which is, it's good. Now the next one, and this is a bit of a controversial one, and probably getting into the heart of the matter, and it is, sometimes it is really difficult to decide who to trust when it comes to applying for a visa, when it comes to agencies, because a lot of the agencies just care about the money. True story. I'll continue. The agency that was helping me with my visa extension did not tell me that a medical test was requested. Apparently, the person that was taking my case left, and nobody knew about my case. I had to chase my agency to then find out that my visa was rejected, that I was asked for a test, a medical test, exam basically, and it wasn't, and my visa, like I just said, was not approved. Love you back, Nestorine. Thanks for the support, bro. And really interesting, because then this person said, when they found out, not even an apology, not even a sorry, no nothing. It's like, oh, the person that was in charge is not in charge anymore. So now, yeah, that's it. Tough luck. And it is extremely frustrating. This is not in the story, but from seeing/hearing this story, another thing that is important to mention is that in Australia, when you appeal to, I would say, most visas, or if your visa is denied, and I hope this doesn't happen to anyone that you know, or especially to you, you would need to pay about $800. This could even be more. So imagine the education agency basically, or the agency taking care of your visa application, doesn't tell you that you need to get a medical exam, you fail to upload it, your visa gets cancelled, and then you have to apply for that visa again. then, well, this person is still in Australia, so I really hope that it's all good. But then imagine that. You spend then an extra $800 plus. One good thing though is that in most cases, if you appeal for a visa or for a visa that was rejected, don't quote me on this, double check this, but in my experience, what I've heard again from students, people close to me, if a visa is rejected, you appeal and then your visa gets approved, or basically immigration changes their decision, you get the money that you pay for the appeal back, or I think you get half of that back, which is good, but you don't want that because of all the stress. This person put here, and after all the stress, worry, not even a sorry, not even we apologize. So it is very sad, seeing these types of things. And, I get a feeling that when I think about agencies, it is a bit like when we think about insurance companies. And let me explain before you think I'm crazy or something. Now, listening from work, wow, this is amazing. Thank you. But look, when I think about this, again, whenever I go on Facebook, obviously every now and then I'm posting on some groups here in Australia about my classes, what I do, or even in general, I would see, I'm not someone that is too much into drama. I try to be very drama free. I'm probably very busy already studying Japanese and, with life. But what I've noticed is that with student agencies in particular, there is always like a lot of drama. Like I paid for an agency, they didn't give me my money back, my visa was refused, the person disappeared. So there is a very, very negative image of the whole who to trust, going back to what this person said. And it's tricky. It's tricky because, again, when I think about lots of agencies, there is always like that, there's a lot of negativity, let's just put it that way. It is a bit like with insurance companies because you never see, or like every 100 reviews about insurance, and I guess this is a different podcast topic, but whenever I look for an insurance, the topics, 100 reviews, out of 100 reviews, maybe 5 max, I'm being super positive, maybe 3 or 2 are good, saying, oh, it's a great company. Everything else is like so bad, I cannot say it because I'll be saying a bunch of bad words. So I think with agencies it's very tricky. And that's right. I mean, it could be the case. Maybe some agencies are like that. That is a challenge, deciding who to trust, which agency might be good for you. So I guess what I can say to you watching, or for you who's basically, here with me, is to just be extra careful. Do your due diligence, do your homework. And when we say do your homework, it doesn't literally mean to do your homework. What that means is double check, research, find out, hear from people, and then make a decision. But don't just jump in with the first person that you see, because that may not be the case. And something that I could say, the same thing is to be said with me. Like I've had people telling me, I was on Instagram, I looked at your profile, I thought this looks really nice, but I kept checking. So I started checking your profile, or someone told me about you, but then I started asking people about you, and then everyone said that you're a really good teacher. Thank you for your support again. And then here we are, and then we are in class. So again, do the same with agencies or with basically anything that you want to do, because it can be tricky. This trust thing, it can be really challenging, and I guess, look, I don't have it here in my notes, but as I'm talking about trust, I guess another problem that we could have in Australia is that sometimes it is difficult when it comes to trusting others, like maybe finding or making friends, let's say, because I would say lots of people are very social in their countries, but especially Latinos, we are so far away from our country that it may be tricky. And when I say to make friends, maybe some of you watching are gonna say, I have a lot of friends. And I'm like, I know, hear me out. I also have a lot of friends. But it is, when I start to think about my non-Latino friends in Australia, things get a bit more difficult. That's not to say that I don't have any friends, or that, people don't have friends here, but that can be a challenge. And well, look, I think that throughout this episode, I have been touching on so many little things that could be an episode by itself. But yeah, who to trust, very, very tricky indeed. Now, what I thought of doing is I've got a mini story just to put things in perspective, and then talk a bit about the good and the not so good about Australia. And for those of you watching, feel free to let me know what you think so far. More than happy to hear from you. And look, when you hear about, oh, go to Australia, you're gonna make a bunch of money, tra-la-la-la-la, if you are hearing that and a part of you, whenever you are watching something on the internet or on social media about coming to Australia, making a lot of money, becoming rich and stuff just from being here, and a part of you is like, this can't be that good. This sounds too good to be true. It probably is, and you need to be mindful. You need to be very careful, and look, that's so true. I've got here, a comment in the chat. Sometimes the language barrier is so high, and that is true. I still remember my one of my classmates. I just went to say goodbye, and I went to kiss her, because in South America we say goodbye with a kiss. And little things, language, culture, it can be tricky. But I get a feeling that, by just being outgoing and just using all the good things in our South American culture, that can really help us to, push through. And maybe for others to see it as well, because I guess sometimes what happens is the culture, the barrier is so different with both language and culture. But then when people realize like, oh, this person is genuine, this person is not trying to scam me or anything, then it is much easier to, make friends from other parts of the world and also with Australians. I think a tricky thing, this will be also an episode by itself. With Australians, I think a big challenge though, before I tell you my story, because this is a really good comment, is that for a lot of them, I've heard this from a few Aussies. I think the problem that Australians have with us is that sometimes they open up their heart to people from overseas, and life is really tough. It's really hard to get to stay in Australia for good. So what would normally happen for a lot of them is that they invest a lot of their time with you, and then, or with us, let's say, and then we go back to our country. Or maybe, for example, I'm based in Melbourne, but then it's like, look, I got my visa invitation, I have to move to Perth, I don't care, it's going to Perth or swimming back to Venezuela, so I'm going to Perth. And I think that this happens at a large scale, and I mean, obviously this is not every single case, but I think that for a lot of Aussies that happens, and that can be very tricky. But now, what I wanted to say and tell you guys is, quick question. Do let me know in the comments on YouTube. Let me know here in the comments of Instagram or even on Spotify. What have you ever heard or watched a video of someone saying, just come to Australia, you can earn $10,000 a month or $12,000 a month. I don't know, you pick the number. Or some people saying, guess how much I can make when I'm in Australia. And then they make the video. And look, again, this is me being, let's say, I'm not going to be super critical because I don't like talking bad about others, but let's just assume that they just want to show you how nice Australia is. Or maybe this person maybe just wants to, let's say show family, or maybe they want to have that as their, what is it called? Like as a memory, I guess, to record the moment. Then, thank you, former student loves me too. But then the problem is this, that what would happen is that they come and they tell you, look how much money I make. I made $5,000, $10,000 in a month. And then you think, oh, shoosh, what am I doing? I'm wasting all my time. I should go and basically, I should go and I should, go to Australia, or I should, basically get that visa. Maybe for someone who's in South America, right? Or from someone who's in another country. And then what happens is that what you don't know and what you don't see is that you are probably, let's say, that you're probably, what is it called? You're probably working to make $5,000 to $10,000 as an international student. And this is just saying without doing your own business, just working in hospitality, cleaning, those types of jobs. It is extremely tough. I don't have too much experience with people who are in, let's say, like working in the mines or those types of jobs. But I met a guy. This is way before Instagram. This is like, let's say 7, 8, 9 years ago. I met a guy who used to make that like $7,000, $8,000 a month. Not every month though, but he would make it a month. And a part of me was like, oh my God, Am I missing out? Because I was also in Australia. Let me give you the caveat. Let me give you the bit, like the interesting bit. Yes, he did make $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month. But do you know how much free time he had? Do you know how many hours per week he worked? His whole life was basically working, going from cleaning job to restaurant, or to cafe to cleaning job to construction. So the whole thing, it's basically, and that's a really good point, lots of money, no mental health. I'll talk about that in a second. And then it's like, yeah, basically he's making a lot of money. But then no one talks about what happened or what that person had to do to get all that money. And when I link it to the beginning of the video, it is tricky, because then it's like, oh yeah, I can go to Australia, I can make $10,000. It's like, bro, or sis, for my ladies, if you are making $10,000 a month and you're working as an international student, you're probably working at least 10 to 12 hours a day. So you have like no free time, you're probably exhausted, and yeah, like you're not doing anything. Is that okay? Totally. I think almost every international student has done that. But I guess the problem is, and when I say that we have done it, is because usually when you are on holidays, I remember that some friends would joke around, and a really, really good friend of mine would tell me, hey, Emilio, you're a very smart guy, so it is holidays time, so you have to do two things. You have to work overtime to save for next semester, of course. And that is what I was about to say, that we all do that. And also, you have to just keep studying to, do well in uni. And that's basically nothing out of the ordinary. Almost every international student does that. When it is holidays, you just work more, you work overtime. And whatever extra you make, you use it to save for the next time you have to pay university fees. But again, be very careful, and be very careful with what you tell yourself. When you say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Australia, or I'm just going to come here and eventually I'm going to be a millionaire, because it is not like that. And exactly, look, and actually, very true. I love this comment. People come as an international student and they usually end up spending a bunch of money in psychotherapy, in physiotherapy, or addictions. And thank you. And it is so true. Look, again, without touching into too many negativity, but when I worked as a cleaner, I had a workmate, lovely guy, and look, and he was very strong, but I don't know, the vacuum, when you had to carry a vacuum right on your back. I think now maybe it's not that common to carry the vacuums on the back, but anyways, old school cleaning. And this person had a problem with the disc. I'm not a doctor, but what I can tell you is that this guy had lots of struggle walking, and also a huge medical bill. So yes, it can, you're gonna come here, you'll make a lot of money as an international student, because things do change a bit when you get a more professional job. But that is not to say that just because you come here and you work super hard, yes, you're gonna make money, but trust me, you're gonna spend a lot of money. And let's see, we've got another comment here. This is another thing where we don't make friends. That's right, because all your life is work. So this is why sometimes I don't like these videos, because a part of me is like, it's getting way... It is a fine line between saying, I make this much in Australia, and then the other part of the line is, I have no social life, or I cannot do anything else, or I'm working the whole day. But no one talks about it, and I guess this is why, or maybe I'm one of the few who talks about this, I don't know. But I also thought to make the episode a bit more positive, let's say, I've been talking half an hour about negative stuff, or the bad side, or the dark side of Australia. But what is some of the good things? And I am going to say that some of these things are, of course, good salaries. And not that everything is money, but money is one thing that you can count. And I'm going to use myself as an example. And this is also of me thinking when I went back to Venezuela last year, I could not work as a teacher in Venezuela. And not because I don't want to, or not because I am, overqualified, or any of those polite excuses. It's simply because the salary is extremely low. I met teachers that teach at a faculty in universities in Venezuela, in public unis, I have to say, not private, who are more qualified than me, who earn a very, very low salary. So, as soon as I see that, or I saw that, a part of me is like, I cannot just move to Venezuela again. And it is tricky because, when I think about it, I feel that I'm in a really privileged position, not only because I am here telling you this, or I get the chance to be with you both in the podcast, on YouTube, here on Instagram, but basically because I couldn't be doing this in my home country. Technically I could, but it's so hard. Like, my life would be 10 times as difficult. And yes, it's very tricky. Very, very, very challenging when I think about it. And for a lot of industries and in a lot of different cases, this is true. Like, if you work in a cafe, in a restaurant in Australia, you can, do really well. And on the flip side, if you work as an engineer, lawyer, or let's say one of those more sought after jobs, positions, then you can get, thank you for the support, then you can get even higher salaries, especially compared to South America, okay? Or compared to Venezuela, because I don't know, you guys are the experts. I've got people listening from Colombia, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, etc. And maybe it's different. Maybe it is a bit different with the US and Canada, maybe. But yeah, definitely good salaries. But let me tell you now what I consider to be by far one of the best things about Australia, and it has to be taking holidays and work-life balance. In that, look, when you work basically anywhere, I still remember even with cleaning, you can work for, a year and you get 1 full month of paid holidays. In most cases, obviously it also depends on your contract and stuff, but it is crazy when you think about it. I remember, again, when I was a student, I would go home for 3 weeks, paid, so I was at home playing with friends and stuff, and then I was getting paid. That was crazy. And now, last year, when I went back home again, and, during my travels in my honeymoon, I met a lot of friends, and my friends are like, hey, bro, are you a Bitcoin millionaire or what? How are you doing this? Is your work letting you take this long holiday, blah, blah, blah? And look, long story short, I was able to take like a very long leave, 6 months to be exact. And again, it's one of those things that I just say that and I'm like, that's crazy. Lots of my friends in developed countries, in places like the US, Canada, and throughout Europe told me like, Emilio, there is no way I can do that. If I say that I want to get 2 weeks off, if I want to get 10 days off, then boom, you would be asked politely to quit, or they would just tell you no in your face. So it is crazy interesting, or that was really interesting for me, because a part of me thought, wow, when you compare Australian dollar with euro, or when you compare with the US dollar, this and that, but putting money aside, just the fact that I could go on a long holiday and other people can't, it's like, wow, that's a really interesting way to think about this one. And that's right. The Australian dream, nice salary, and then having that good income, that's true. And that's right. Like the emotional cost, the physical cost, because we do get tired, it is definitely there. Another thing is, I put it here in my list, is work-life balance, because with work-life balance, I think Australians take this really seriously. Especially, look, we've had some comments about the emotional side with mental health. It is crazy. Like I think in a lot of developed countries after the COVID pandemic, this became more common. But you could basically I could potentially just call my boss and say, hey, I'm not coming tomorrow, I feel stressed or whatever, and I can get the day off. I would say that in a lot of workplaces in Australia can do that, obviously with some caveats to that. So every job is going to be different. Don't feel like, anyone in Australia can call and say, hey, I'm sick, I don't go, and then you get paid for that. No, but what I'm trying to say is that work takes that very seriously. And I noticed that without even knowing about the day off. I remember one time talking to the principal at the school where I work, and I was just being very honest, like, hey, look, I'm a bit stressed, and is it okay if, I don't know, I think I was asking for like half a day, or I don't really remember what it was, but I was basically talking to the principal, And I mentioned that I'm a bit stressed, and the principal is like, hey, Emilio, do you know that you can ask for a day off for your mental health? And I was like, what is that? And I just went on like, hey, you're talking to an ex-international student. I go to work. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm going to work. I would have to like be sick that I cannot stand on from the bed for me not to come to work. And then the principal cracked laughing, and it became a bit of a joke. But it's true. It's true, because in many cases, in my 12 years here, so many times, I would go to work feeling sick or feeling unwell or tired, and you cannot say, "Oh, I'm sick. I don't feel good," because if you don't go to work, you don't get paid, and then it becomes way more difficult. So that's right. There are lots of different costs, and just that's right. It's all about balance. And a good example could be that Joker movie, but it's seriously really interesting. And I think this is not only me, okay? I'm gonna talk about you guys for a little bit. When students come and they prepare for IELTS and PTE with me, a lot of them, I mean, I cannot say it's half, but I really want to say it is at least 30%, 30 to 40% of people come to me and they say, especially if they have a sponsor. If they have a sponsor, there is a high chance that this happens. They would come to me and just say, hey, Emilio, let's get ready. Let's go intense. Let's do like 3 classes a week or whatever, or let me join your course. And a part of me is like, hey, how's everything with work and that, because even though I'm not a mental health professional, I care about you because I know how stressful this exam can be, the visa, the language learning and everything. And a lot of the times people say, look, Emilio, it doesn't matter. Thank you for asking. Don't worry about work because I talked to my boss and I'm going to get basically 1 week or 2 weeks off work. My boss knows this, so that's okay. I'm getting my sponsorship, and then, I'm just 100% going into this. And I couldn't agree more, and I have said this to few students. You'll be surprised, Nestorin. But I tell them, look, as much as I would like to, obviously I can listen, but I always say, if you want to talk to a professional, if you want to talk to someone who has helped lots of people here in Australia, especially, the South American community, then you have to reach out to Nestorin. He will take care of you. I'll leave it at that. I'm more than happy to help, I'm not going to be like that teacher that I said in university, because I have had students telling me like, hey, Emilio, I want to tell you something that happened to me, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be like, oh, shut up. Email me, or I don't want to know. That's not me. So I'm happy to listen, but I always mention, if you want to talk to someone, I know the guy, he'll take care of you. That has to be Nestorin. And well, love back to you, bro. But also, I think an interesting thing that I also put here is that something that is important to also mention is that Australia is far. It is far from everywhere, which can be both good and bad. I'm not going to get into politics. That can be a whole new episode. But the fact that Australia is placed so far, it's like 2 to 3 flights. That uncertainty of, I don't know when I'm going to meet my family. I don't know when I'm going to meet my friends. And maybe if you're lucky to, let's say for example, maybe if you're like from Argentina or Chile, at least, it is like, I guess, 1 flight less. But for example, the other problem I have is that, going to Venezuela is so hard and also so expensive. So a part of me is like, okay, I don't know when I'm going back to Venezuela. I don't know when I'm going back to my country. I don't know when I'll go and see my family, or some of my family members, I should say. And then that daunting or that thought, it really hits you. Not only to me, to anyone. And it is a problem because, yes, you do get, as I said, you might get really good pay. Yes, you might get work flexibility. But it's tricky because it's not like you can always go and be going back to your country. So this is why I was saying maybe like if someone is from Chile, Argentina, perhaps it's a bit easier. But like I also said, I think as I'm saying that it is hard sometimes to go back, maybe for some of you it is not that difficult, especially for my students who are from Asia, South Asia, maybe Europe. Well, Europe is also quite far, But yeah, especially it's just that I think going to Venezuela is so hard, But that's also on its own a different topic. And something that I shouldn't forget to do is to say a massive thank you to you guys for joining me in this episode. We cover lots of different things. So a very quick recap. Life changes when you go from the first stages of being an international student into getting into uni. You may have struggles finding who to trust when it comes to your visa paperwork, visa applications, basically who you get advice from when it comes to getting all your visa and all that sorted. And it is very important to improve your English skills. Obviously, if you're watching or if you know someone who would like to pass IELTS and PTE, there is a lot of people out there. There are lots of myths. There are lots of templates. But I mean, my best template, or even not even template, sorry, my best trick for both IELTS and for PTE, and for any exam, and for this matter, for any exam, to do with languages, of course, right? Because, you know, I'm like the language nerd. In other topics, a bit different. I don't know about engineering exams and all that, but the biggest trick, and I will always say this, is for IELTS, for PTE, for an English test, is to improve your skills. If you want to do that, if you want to take your English to the next level, the best way you can support me is by telling others about what I do. So massive thank you for your support. That's what keeps the podcast going. And basically, again, I'm beyond grateful because I'm happy to be part of your process. Lots of people, I just had, just to tell you on the good news, I had 2 students who passed PTE this week. And one of them basically had a very last attempt. And please don't do that. This is like, I also get a mini heart attack. And, Nesrin is watching. I'm sure he might identify with what I'm about to say. But yeah, like when I hear stories from my students, or when someone tells me this is my last chance to get my PTE, or I have to take a flight and go back, that really, Jesus, it does put a lot of stress on me. And it's because I care about you guys. It's not like, oh, memorize this template, boom, boom, off you go. That's not how it works. So I would highly recommend to really focus on polishing your skills. And if you want to do that, again, get in touch. It is very likely that there's going to be preparation courses in November. I am not fully sure yet, but if they're not in November, definitely in December. So maybe you can take the exam before we get into holiday season, or before we finish up 2024. And other topics that we had was that if you get very homesick, or if you get homesick easily and you think you're going to miss your country, maybe don't come. That's not to say that maybe when you come, you're going to, get used to it and then things will get better. But it is important to keep that in mind. I would also use this as a moment to say, embrace Australia, embrace other cultures, because as much as you miss your country, there might be something good from another country, something different, something that you just never know, because there might be that unknown over there. So I would highly recommend just be a little bit open-minded. Maybe I think sometimes I'm way too open-minded, and that's cool. That's how I like to be. And maybe I use languages for that. That can also be a different topic. And that's right. Good students learn good English. Thank you. Better said. Sorry, you couldn't say that in any better way. And then we've got basically all the positives: work-life balance, good salaries, and that flexibility when taking holidays. And I would also say that Australian culture, that touch of no worries, just relaxing. I think it is really nice that Australia has got that attitude, and I think that the longer you stay, you slowly may be adopting it. Another problem is that yes, you do make a lot of money, but tell me, what is the cost of making that money? Yeah, you can make $8,000, you can make $10,000 as an international student, but how many hours are you working? If you're doing Uber, how many times is your car breaking down, or your bicycle breaking down? Or if you're doing deliveries, what happens if you get an accident? What's the point of making $10,000 if you're gonna pay $5,000 or more going to hospital and getting everything sorted, even if you have insurance? Or in another note, like, because we have here a mental health professional, what's the point of earning $10,000 and feeling miserable? You tell me. I don't know. But this is where things get interesting. So it's all about, I guess, finding that balance, and everyone is a bit different. But it is important to think about these things. So it's not always like you're going to come to Australia and boom, your life is going to be solved and everything is going to be amazing. And I'm not saying that it's not going to be amazing. It will. And I'm going to use me as an example on my closing message. I am really grateful of coming to this country. Australia has given me way more than I could ask. Let me start by saying, well, first of all, all the experiences I've had, the fact that, I basically completed all my education here, with all the good and bad and all the criticism, I really enjoyed my time as a student. On a more serious note, I met my wife. I have been able to travel around the planet thanks to being here. I also represented Australia twice when I was a student, once in Japan and once in China. And that is something that for me, it's been incredible. And I cannot, put a number, or I cannot it's so hard to put into words how grateful I feel with this country. So believe me when I'm telling you, this may sound a bit cheesy, but coming to Australia did change my life. Also the fact that I became a teacher and I met so many, I know, a nerd. Also, and thank you. Also the fact that, I basically had a chance to, meet so many cool people as an English teacher. It is just unreal. And to me, it really, really means a lot. It is something that I don't know if this would happen, if this would have happened to me if I had stayed in Venezuela and if I didn't come to Australia, or maybe if I had gone to a different country. So I am extremely happy with my decision, and I'm getting a bit philosophical here, but I always like to think about the fact that I did come and what you see here, and basically, let's say that the fact that I'm filming this episode and I'm doing all this, it is not partially, but a big part of that is because I said one day, I'm gonna go to Kangaroo Land, I'm gonna go there, check it out, give my best, and then boom, all these things that I just said happened. So Australia is amazing, but just be very mindful. And sometimes when you see something on social media, it may not always be like that. I'm just gonna leave it at that point. For those of you guys on Instagram, massive thank you for being with me. For those of you on YouTube, of course, big thank you. I hope that you liked the video. My apologies, switching back and forth between the two cameras. And of course, massive thank you to my OGs of Instagram, because Instagram downloads are still up there, so it is amazing. And I know, I'm happy to hear that, some people here in the chat saying, yeah, I'm happy to be in Australia, I am growing, I am improving. And well, yeah, look, another thing, thank you for the reminder, Nestrin, is that I should also say that I became the Iron teacher. That's true, doing an Ironman, that's crazy. I don't know if I think it's almost impossible to do it being in Venezuela because of all the logistics around it. But anyways, I'm just trying to say, your support means the world to me. I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. This deserves a part 2 because there is so much to unpack. Massive thank you to those of you who shared your stories. You know who you are. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to say who you are, but it means a lot because I'm sure that a lot of people watching this, basically they took your story and they said, yeah, that resonates with me. And that is extremely cool. Maybe some of you were at home. Maybe you're relaxing. Maybe you are just, going for a walk. Maybe you're watching this pre-recorded. Maybe you are just, on a drive. You're commuting. You're going for shopping. Whatever you are doing, I am part of your day. I should say, yeah, I am part of your day. And also, not only I was part of your day, you were part of my day too. So big thank you. This week was crazy busy. And the reason for that is another episode. I'm gonna stop saying that phrase that much. But again, massive thank you for being with me. And I'll see you in the next episode. 2 more interviews to come. I've been wanting to make interviews. For those of you who follow the podcast, there's been a problem where I record and, I have 2 options, like improvise and just record anywhere. And to be honest, I don't like too much that option. Or I could record properly if I'm a bit patient. So that's what I'm doing. And luckily, things are getting better. And now I'll be able to record more interviews. And I think that'll be pretty interesting. And anyways, I'll tell you all about that in the next episode. Take care. Miss me. I'll miss you. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care. And bye for now.